The AMD Radeon RX 9070 XT and RX 9070 non-XT review embargo lifts today. They go up for sale tomorrow for $600 and $550 respectively, and there's been a long anticipated and much hyped wait for these cards to launch, probably because AMD announced them like 3 different times over the course of the past couple months. With that in mind, my goal today is to plow through this video as efficiently as possible to give you guys a bit of a data dump to share my benchmark results, which is why I'm starting off right away with my benchmarks summary right here. At 4K, when using the RTX 4070 Super as a baseline, the RX 9070 is 2.3% faster and the 9070 XT is 18.7% faster, while the RTX 5070 is 1.8% faster. If we drop down to 1440 resolution, the 9070 is now neck and neck, about 0.4% faster than the 4070 Super, while the 9070 XT is 14.2% faster and the RTX 5070 is 2.4% faster. And finally, my cumulative results at 1920 by 1080 show the 9070 slipping just behind the 4070 Super, though they're still neck and neck. It's 0.3% slower. The 9070 XT is still 12% faster, whereas the RTX 5070 is 3.3% faster.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Corsair Frame 4000D computer case, available in a variety of configurations thanks to the Frame modular case system. Customize your cooling with the InfiniRail fan mounting system, use removable panels to cover cables or mount fans to guide the Frame 4000D's high airflow pathways, or go for a clutter-free build thanks to reverse connector motherboard compatibility. There's also room for dual 360mm radiators and included GPU anti-sag support and easy IQ Link integration for RGB control and system monitoring. For more on the Corsair Frame 4000D, click the sponsor link in the video description. So this might be a bit of an oversimplification, but it seems to me like what we're getting with this launch is two $550 replacements for the RTX 4070 Super in the 5070 and the 9070 non-XT that perform roughly equivalent to the 4070 Super for $50 less. And yet, I have a feeling that most of the reviewers are going to be saying that the 5070 sucks because of that, and the 9070 non-XT is a great value because of that. And I first want to address why that might be the case. Well, with the RTX 50 series, we have 3 other cards that have launched in about the past month or month and a half. All of them have immediately sold out. All of them have immediately been subjected to scalper pricing on the secondary market with grossly inflated prices. And there's simply not a lot of trust that that same thing isn't going to happen with the 5070. By the time this video goes live, we'll be able to start assessing whether or not that is the case, because the 5070 goes up for sale the same day that we can do reviews for the 9070 and 9070 XT. And I think availability, more so than the actual performance of these cards, is what's going to be the deciding factor in whether either company has a good launch or not in the next week or so. Will you actually be able to buy any of these cards at the promised price? Because that is, I think, the silver lining for the 50 series launch and everything, is at the MSRPs, these cards all represent a nice step forward in value versus what we've been getting for the past year plus. So with that context established, we're now going to take a closer look at the individual benchmarks that I ran, where those summary results were derived from, and this is part of the accumulation of a lot of the testing that I've done over the past month plus, because if you guys watched any of my videos on the earlier 50 series launches, you might know that I had a few issues here and there running the tests, but I did want to finally come out and say, like, here's all my numbers, here's the comparisons to add to the review pile for the 5070, 9070, and 9070 XT. Just starting off with the comparison of the specs for all the cards that I tested. And while we're going through these benchmarks, please keep in mind that I'm now including a bunch of ray tracing titles. It's 2025, and I think ray tracing is important as well. I think 5 of the 8 titles that I tested have significant ray tracing influence. And here's a look at my system configuration and testbed stats as well. And now, Joe, if we can cue up another nice background track, here are my benchmarks at 1080, 1440, and 4K. Here's one more look at my cumulative results. The 9070 XT was absolutely outperforming the 5070 by a good 10 to 15% across the board. And at 4K, the 9070 outperformed the 5070 as well, coming in at 2.3% faster than the 4070 Super versus the 5070 Founders Edition being 1.8% faster. Meanwhile, at 1440 and 1080, the 9070 is pretty much neck and neck with the 4070 Super, while the 5070 manages to extend a 2 to 3% lead. Next up is a look at cost per frame at MSRP. Yesterday, the 5070 was looking quite good at 82 cents per frame, but we can see that the 9070 and 9070 XT both surpassed that in terms of value, with the 9070 XT being the best value card at 76 cents per frame. The RX 9070 non-XT at $550, as anticipated, is not quite as good of a value, coming in at 79 cents per frame, and that hews a lot closer to the 5070. My anticipation is that if the 5070 sells out immediately and the prices immediately increase, the 9070 will probably stay at about $550. However, if Nvidia is able to get the 5070 onto store shelves in reasonable numbers to fulfill demand so that they can be sold for $550, then I think the 9070 non-XT will need to drop down to $500 or so in order to remain competitive. And honestly, I think that's the price that this card should have launched at. It would help distinguish it a bit more from the 9070 XT. As things go, I think most people will opt for the 9070 XT for just $50 more. As things stand, I think people will opt to pay the $50 or about 9% price increase for the 9070 XT because that gets you about 15% more performance. I think if the 9070 was $500, it would be a more desirable card on its own rather than just sitting adjacent to the 9070 XT, making it kind of look better. Or alternatively, if the XT is selling out everywhere, then people will be like, oh, okay, I guess I'll just go with the non-XT model since that's in stock. I have one more cost per frame chart. This one's just adding the current pricing for all of these GPUs because current pricing is kind of ridiculous right now. I'm still sticking with the MSRP for the 5070 and the 9070s here because I don't know what street pricing is going to be or what availability is going to look like at this point. But to round things out, here is a closer look at the actual 9070 XTs that I've been testing today. These are the PowerColor Reaper models, so these are meant to ship and run at stock speeds. Of course, they could be overclocked as well. They both measure 11.5 inches long. They are both dual slot cards, so they do not require a third slot, and they don't overhang the third slot as well either. Both cards feature dual 8-pin PCI Express graphics connectors, a blow-through portion of the cooler down at this end, and a nice clean back plates. I feel like the design of this card is exactly what a lot of people want. Just a GPU that's functional, that doesn't take up a huge amount of space, that doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles or blingy, edgy gamer design aesthetics either. In terms of cooling, both cards performed just fine as well. The 9070 non-XT hit 61C max temp on the GPU, 76C on the hotspot, and perhaps just a little warm on the memory at 90C. Meanwhile, the 9070 XT hit 63 degrees on the CPU, 88 on the hotspot, and 92 degrees on the memory. With all that said, a few closing thoughts, and it's actually less about the graphics cards and more about the way I go about producing videos of graphics cards, because if you watched any of my 50 series videos, it was probably evident that my testing didn't go smoothly, and so I didn't really have the chance to do this kind of full benchmark review video for those launches. That said, the videos that I did instead, which were kind of meta summaries of some other reviews, as well as some analysis and feedback that I had like the day of launch or a little bit post-launch, those videos actually did quite well and people seem to enjoy them. So it's made me sort of rethink the way that I'm going to go about doing launch coverage in the future. But I'd really like your feedback on that. Would you prefer this kind of video with a bunch of benchmarks and graphs, or would you prefer more of the post-launch analysis content that I have done a lot with the 50 series and which I'm planning to do with the 9070 as well? So if you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the thumbs up button and definitely get subscribed because I am planning to do a summary of a bunch of other reviews of these cards so we can get a bit of a broader look at how they've been received. But closing reminder to check out my store at paulshardware.net. If you want to help support my channel, you can get some high quality merchandise over there. And once again, if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you're not already, and check the description down below for retail links to these cards if available, as well as important links to like my store and like a full description down there that I meticulously write up every time. And I'm always like, do people actually read this? I'm not sure. I'm never quite sure. But that's all for this video, guys. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one.